So if you have a little bit of experience with Unreal Engine, but you've never made a film before, then I'm going to show you my basic setup. How I create a sequencer, bring in some animation, set up some cameras, and then start blocking that out with an environment, and then render all of that with the Move Render Queue, so you can bring those frames into your edit and start putting together your film. So let's get on with that. So I like to start with a blank project, and I just make a project, put it in wherever I keep my projects, film, like that. And then I've got starter content on, and then I'm going to hit create. So it'll make that project. And while it's doing that, I will explain why do I make films with Unreal Engine rather than a traditional kind of pipeline. Well, the biggest thing is speed. It's because you get this immediate feedback when you're putting objects around a scene and you're moving the camera and then you're moving the lights and then you're doing virtual scouting and those sort of things. So that's a huge advantage over the traditional pipeline. But also once it's working in Engine, you can then use that story and you can tell it in a different way. So you could go into a VR application, or you can go into a game application. Or so it gives you this potential for a lot more transmedia type events. All right, so here we have our blank project. And I want to put something in here that we can play with. So I added that starter content, and you can see it in here. So there's some objects and things like that. So look, they've got some props and things and a table and whatever. But then I also wanted to add a character. And I thought, what we can do is use the third person template. And so if you want to add that, you can go into here under the plus, and then you go into add feature or content pack, and then you can add the third person into here. So I'm going to add that, and it'll download that and put it in there. So all of these things come with just standard regular Unreal Engine. I didn't want to download things off the Fab asset store or anything like that. But that is one of the massive advantages as well of playing with Unreal, is you've got that huge marketplace on all that content to just pull and kit bash from, and really gets you accelerated into your story, so you can kind of enjoy the fun part before you have to worry about the kind of technical stuff and building things. But once you've got that good template and that framework, then you can level up your environment, your characters, your animation, but you've got a nice sense of the story. And I find that so rewarding. So here we are. I've got some characters here, so I'm going to go into the mannequins, and let's go into meshes, and I'll go and get Manny, drag him into here. So there's our little character, and let's bring in Quinn as well. So he's got someone to talk to. There we are. Just got orbit around this, so that's our world. And then what I'm going to do is just have them walk along, and I'm going to follow them with some cameras, and I'll put some objects in there just to kind of start blocking out a story. So I'm going to now go in and make a directory just called levels. So I'm going to go to new folder and make a directory called levels, or a folder called levels, and then that's just good practice to put your levels in the subdirectory of there. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this film. So this is my film, and then I'm going to save this level into here. So go file, save current level as, and I'm going to put it into that directory, and I'm going to call it P for persistent level, and then the name of my project, which I'm just calling a film. So there's my level. And if this was a game, you'd kind of have blueprints, and you'd trigger things and trigger movements and all sorts of things on player start when you hit play. But for cinematics and animatics and filmmaking, you use the sequencer. So the sequencer is your foundation of storytelling in Unreal. So you go to right mouse button and then go into cinematics and then create a level sequence. And I call it LS for level sequence, and I'm calling it film. There we are. So I'll double click on that, and then that will open up your sequencer. So this is your sequencer, and it's like your non-linear editor. So you've got your timeline going across here, and you drag that, and that's moving your frames. So you've got discrete frames, and then along here is where you'll drag and put assets, and then you'll get animation tracks along here. The important thing to do at the beginning is just set your frame rate. And since I'm from a film background, I like to work at 24 frames per second. So there's my timeline. And now we've got absolutely nothing happening. So that's great. So I'm happy. That's like, it's a fresh canvas. It's a blank page. So one of the reasons I brought in these characters is when you bring in the third person asset, you get some basic animations in here. So I'm going to add a little walk cycle onto these two guys. So what you do is you grab your asset from your outliner and then you drag that into your sequencer. So let's grab Manny, drag him into here, and then it'll put him into the sequencer, and it defaults to the control rig. So I'm not going to go over the control rig much right now, but I'm just going to zoom and just show you what it is. So you can animate all these things by hand, and it's got inverse kinematics and all those sort of wonderful things that animators love. So you can really, have at it, and you can save a key for every single frame and all that sort of stuff. But for now, I'm going to delete this because you can add it back later, but I'm going to delete it just so we can use some existing FBX animation. And so if you go into the animation track and you hit the plus button, it will look into the content directory, and basically any animation that's compatible with this character, you'll see it in here. And the default one, you've got all these like little animations for arm and thigh, but they're kind of testing ones. But there's one for a walk, which kind of comes with the third person template. So I'm going to add in the walk. So, and it went exactly where I dragged it. So I should have really gone to the start frame and put it there, but it doesn't matter because you can just move this over here. So let's put that at my start frame. And if I hit press play, there he is. He's walking on the spot. So I'm going to have to animate his position. One thing I tend to do, I'm not going to do it now, but often I will change my timeline to start at frame 1001 and make it 1001 to say 1200, whereas the default it starts at 000. But if you want to change that, you go into here, this little cog settings button, and you change, I'll do it anyway. Let's go and make it proper. So 1001, and then my end frame is going to be 1200. So there's my start frame and my end frame, and I'm just going to drag this animation into that area. So now if I click my mouse up here, it'll start playing that starting at 1001. And to zoom into this area, I'm just going to change the time bar down here like that. So now I'm starting at 1001, and here's the frame counter. That shows you what frame you're currently on. Now, the reason why I do this is because, say you're starting at frame 1 and you've got your shot and the character's doing something, and you go, oh, that's great. But then you go, actually, I want to extend the head a bit because I just need a little bit more time where they walk into the frame. So then you're moving your animation to a negative value. So you'll be starting at, say, -20 or -100 or something like that. And the trouble is the way that a lot of the nonlinear editing software reads in files, it hates negative frame numbers. So it can be a real pain to then go, I've got to move everything later. So it's always just really good practice to start at 1001. And then you're not going to have that issue. So there's my animation. And what I can do in this animation, I can drag the track and move it around. What I can also do is extend it. And if you grab the end of this track and just pull it, you can see here, it'll start just looping this like that. So it'll just loop that animation. And this animation is designed to be loopable. So if I keep playing it like this, it'll loop it, and then fantastic. Okay, so we've got some animation. And now what I want to do is just animate the character along. So I'm going to select him, and here's his position. So you can just drag it here. And then I can animate here or here. So you've got a choice. So the easiest way is if you just hit this little button here, you've got little keyframes. So you can add a keyframe here. And then you'll see in here, it's added a keyframe too. And that's my transform track. So this character has got a transform. And there it is. And that's your overall global position of the character. So I'll go to my end frame. And then let's select him and move him forward like this. And then I can hit save there. Again, I can hit that like that, and then it saves a key. Or I'm just going to undo that, Control Z. Or you can use here. So there's a button here, so you can press that one and save a key. That will save a key on all of the transforms. So to save individual elements, you go into the transform, then you go into location, then you can save your X, Y, or Z, or you can hit all three there, and then you've got a key. So now you've got an animated key, and then as you can see, he's kind of like starting slow and he's getting faster because it defaults to a spline, like a Bezier type curve. So what we can do is we can select these points And we're going to just close that up. You don't have to do that. You can do them individually. But if you select the point, you see it's gone blue like that. So if you select it and then right mouse button, you can change the type of interpolation of this line. So it's going to make him linear. And make this one linear as well. And also you can then set your default animation to the type of curve that it makes by default in this little diamond here. So you open that up and then you can set it so every time you save a key from now on it'll be linear or cubic or whatever it is. So here's that animation, and there's something slightly wrong with it. It's a little bit slippy, it's windy, and he's on ice. So we can move that. Either we can just go to the end frame here and then select my character, and then I can move him. But if I move him like that, I would need to save a keyframe again. So I could hit save like that, and then it would, you can see there that spline's changed. Or you can select that keyframe and then go into, or you can save it here, then go into your curves. So see this button here, that's your curves editor, like that. And then here is your curve. So you've got your transformation, here's my location, and then you've got your X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to take my Y, I'm just going to zoom out, and then I'm going to take this curve here, that point, and then if I move it like this, it's all freely moving, like that. Or if I want to lock it in position as I move it, if you hold down Shift, then it'll only move in that direction that you've just clicked. So I'm just going to move him over here, like that, and then let's have a look. So he's a bit slow like that. I'm going to move him back a bit. So we've got a character, he's walking along. So we're going to do the same to his friend. So I'm going to grab my character, and then we have to drag her into the sequencer like that. And then I'm going to delete the control rig, CR, mannequin, like that. So that's gone now. And now I'm going to put some animation on her. So we go into, I'm going to go to my start frame. I'm going to go to the animation plus, and then search for, she's got all these different animations. So we can, let's have a look what we've got. there's a walk, there's a pose, walk in place. So that's kind of funny. Actually, I'll just put that one on, but she sort of just shuffles. All right, and then what you can also do, actually what I'll do here is I will have her just walking on the spot like that, and then she'll start walking. So I can take another animation here. So going to the animation, hit plus, and then find that walk. Where is it? Walk forward, like that. So now I've got her walking in place, and then she's got to walk. And then you can see in between here, it just goes back to its default position. And you can change that. Select the animation, right mouse button, properties, and then it's this one called when finished. It'll go to project default, or you can keep the state like that. So now when we stop it, it'll just stop, and then she'll just hop onto the next one. And hopefully I can zoom in here a bit. But so now I've got two tracks that are separate little bits of animation. But the thing I love is you can blend these together. So if I drag this one over the top of that one, then it's actually going to blend those together. So whoop, like that. So it starts to blend those animations, which is fantastic. I love that, which is great. So I'm going to blend that, and then I'm going to extend this by just dragging this one, and it started to repeat that animation. So, and it's going to drag him a bit more as well. So now what I'm going to do is select my whole character here. So if I grab the top, it's going to select the animation and the transform and move those together. So I can have that kind of start here. Now let's have a look. So there we are. All right, so she's waiting, hurry up, and then they're going to start walking. So now I'm going to animate her. Let's go to a first frame here. Let's have a look. I'm going to save a key on her. I've selected her, Quinn. Press save key. So that's saving my location, X, Y, and Z. And then let's go and translate her along here. Oh, I didn't save my key. That was one thing. If you want to have automatic keys turned on, use this button here. So this one here. So you press that, and when that button's on, now when you change your frame, let's go to about here, dragging her along here, and now it's making a key. So it's basically an auto key. Let's go and drag her over there. There we are. So she's waiting for him. Oh, come on, hurry up. And then, hey, now she's going to have a chat with him. Fantastic. So there's my animation. So I tend to block my animation first, and then I'll put that into the environment. And then I'll start playing with the cameras and all those sort of things. So let's have a look in the starter content, have a look in the props, and then there's a bench. There we are. Grab a bench, put it down there. I'm going to just rotate it around. There we are. And then go back into sequencer. All right, so they're walking past a bench. So let's put something else there. Let's go into content browser. And she's standing next to, what is this one? What is that? So I'm just going to play for a little bit and make something stupid just to fill out this. Inspiration hit me. So I'm going to have him walk through a door. So he's going to walk through this door and she's going to follow, like she's been waiting there, stalking him or something. So I just wanted to show you how to animate something in here. So like here I've added the door and we want to swing it open as he walks in. So we grab the door from the outliner and we drag it into our sequencer. And now we've got a transform here, so we can add a key. So let's go and let's open up the transform, go to rotation, and I'm just going to grab all three. So click there. And then as he walks through, I will rotate this now. X, Y, Z. I'm not quite sure. Let's try. Oh, there we go. I got lucky. So I'm going to have that swing through like that. So he'll go whoop, and then we'll have it swing back like that. And we'll make a little bit of overlap because we love a bit of overlap like that. And then like that. So here we go. Vroomp. Beautiful. Okay, and if I wanted to edit that and play with it, go into your curves, and then you can change your curve window. I'm going to just grab that one, rotation, like that, and let's have a look. Let's have him start a bit more dramatic. And here, in the curves editor, you've got, if you select on the curve, you can break these. So you selected the curve, selected the point, right mouse button, break. So that means now I can animate these tangents separately. So we want it to swing fast, comes through like that, and then down, and then let's bring this one back. So there we are. Okay, so there's my amazing animation. Great. All right, well, we'll refine that later. Okay, going back into my sequencer, and now I'm just going to add some walls. So I'm just going to grab the square plus button, but basically you go into here and you can add some shapes, some basic cubes and cylinders and things like that. So I'm just going to add a cube. Here he is, and then move him along here. Okay, all right, so that'll do for now. It really doesn't make much sense. It's a surrealist film. There we are. Perfect. Okay, so now I've got some animation, I've got a little bit of environment, and then now what I'm going to do is add some cameras so we can animate some cameras. So I'm just going to frame it around like this. So this is a little cheat that I like, because often I'll kind of like find a nice angle that I like. And so say I like this angle, I'm going to turn this into a camera that we can then add into the sequencer. And so what you do is you go up here to these three little dots, and then you say, create camera here, Cine Camera Actor, because Cine Camera Actor's got some bells and whistles and things that the regular camera doesn't have. So Cine Camera Actor, like that. And then that adds it into the outliner. So we've got a Cine Camera Actor there. I'm going to change its name to CM for camera, wide. So there's my wide camera. And then I'm going to show you how to change the focal distance. So I'm just going to pick this frame here, and then I'm going to select my camera, and I'm going to drag it into the sequencer. So now in the sequencer, it's added a camera cuts track. So this is your current camera that's playing, and you can have multiple cameras. And then I'm going to select the current aperture, and I'm going to dial it down. But it's not really having that much of an effect on it. It's a little bit. But if you go into the actual camera here in the details panel, it's actually under the lens settings, there's a minimum f-stop and a maximum f-stop. So it kind of defaults the lowest point to 1.2. So we can override that with just type in 0.2 or something like that. And now I can make this like really crazy out of focus, and you've got a lot more control, which is something that I like. And then you can see here that they're not in focus. So I focus them by going into the focus settings tab here and then turn on something called Draw Debug Focus Plane, and you click that on and it basically gives you a purple wall where that focus is. So at the moment it's set at 10,000 units away or whatever it is. So I'm just going to pull that closer, and there is the focal plane. So you can see like this is out of focus here and they're sharp in focus, and now I'm just going to move them forward and let's pull it forward like that. So, and now if I go back, I'm going to turn it off by pressing that button there, then they're going to be out of focus. So it could be a nice arty shot when they get into focus. Look at that, beautiful. And to get rid of these icons in your screen, you just press G so that they're not getting in your way. So look at that, beautiful. So you can animate that in here, and you can just set a keyframe for it. So let's go back to my start. Here we are, and we're focused on the door here. So this is nice and out of focus, and then I can set a key plus in there. Then we'll come forward here, and then we'll animate the focal point there. Beautiful. Look at that. Amazeballs. Okay, so there's one shot. And so now I'm going to add another shot. Let me turn this off. So I'm not selecting that camera anymore. So now I'm in free mode, free whatever it is. So let's go and find another shot. And then I'm going to go and add another camera. Create camera here, Cine Camera Actor. And I've got Cine Camera Actor 3. Let's go for CM long. So I'm going to have a longer lens on this one. And so drag that camera into here. And now I'm going to add a second camera. And so here I've got my long camera. And if I press this button, I'm viewing from that camera view. And if I click this button here next to the wide one, it'll jump to the wide one. So you can cut between them here. But to animate them, when you're playing your sequence back, it will use this camera. So this is just looking at wide. And it says CM wide there. So we can have... if I pick a frame and then I hit the plus button, and I can choose which camera I want to cut to here. So I'm going to go to the long one. So now it's cutting between that one and that one, but I'm going to move it the other way around. And so let's go for a close up on her. So I select the track. If I right mouse button, and then down here you've got the cameras that are available, and since we've only got two, this is the selected one, and then I'm going to change it to the long shot. So there's the long camera, and then I'm going to cut to the wide just here. So right mouse button, CM wide, and so now it will go from that shot as you come through, and then we're going to cut to that one. Movie making, there you go. And so let's change the lens. So I'm going to, another way of selecting the camera, you can, especially when your script's really long, it's quite hard to find sometimes, so you can right mouse button and then just go select CM long, and it will jump to that camera that's available. So if you press that button next to the camera, it will just show you that camera's view all the way through, no matter where you are in the timeline. So I was going to change the focal length and make it a bit of a longer lens. Okay, and then I'm going to change the focal distance, bringing it close. I'm just doing it by eye this time, or I could put on my focus plane. So there we are. So now I'm going to save a key for my focal distance. So there's my camera, and then let's go, and as this swings through, I'm going to animate it. So let's go into here, into the transform. I'm just going to hit plus on that. So now there's a key for the camera rotation position. So I can move that over here like that, and then move it a bit forward. Amazing. And then I'm going to go back to the main camera cut track by pressing that button there. And now it will cut from the long to the wide. So there it is. There she's waiting. It comes through, and then whoa, look at that. So if you want to change your camera cut point, you basically grab the camera, click on that camera track, and then select the end. See, it turns into a little arrow thing, and then you can drag that cut point. So you can make him start a bit later, or I can make that cut start earlier. Let's have it here, just there. So we grab that and just drag it to there like that. There we are, and it cuts there then. Boink. So now we're ready to render. So I'm going to show you the movie render queue. So pause that, and then you find it here under this little clapper loader there. And you click on that, and then you go into, that's your level sequence, and here's your settings. At the moment it's got unsaved config, which is the default, and it basically gives you deferred rendering and a JPEG sequence, but I like to delete the JPEG sequence because I like to have an EXR sequence. It's got a bit more, well, a lot more depth. It's 16-bit. It's got a lot more dynamic range, and that's what you would use in visual effects compositing. So I like to have an EXR sequence, and I change the compression from PIS, which is quite big, so the frames are quite large, and I change it to DWAA, which is DreamWorks Animation. And then I don't need multi-layer. Multi-layer is if you want to have sub-channels. Don't worry about it. I'll turn that off for now. And then deferred rendering, that's your basically says use this one rather than path tracing. And then we've got our output here, and that's where you put your name and all this sort of stuff. So one thing I like to do is turn on anti-aliasing. So I'm going to go to settings, anti-aliasing, the first one. And then I like to make it temporal super resolution, TSR, and I would make it 7 for now. So that is the amount of subframes that it will kind of like give you motion blur and those sort of things for. So the temporal sample count, the higher that is, the slower it renders, but the better fidelity. So then we say we're going to the output now, and we're going to say output directory, and it's going to put it by default into the project directory saved movie with blah, 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 but you can specify where you want to put that by clicking the 3 little dots here, and then you find where you want to put it and say select folder. Then you've got file name format, and you see these little things in brackets. These are down here, these are kind of metadata that you kind of get for free. So it'll look at these variables. If you put it into a bracket, then you can actually feed it into here. Let's change it to the camera name. So since I've got 2 cameras, so camera name. So camera name, so it will name my file after, let's go up here, it'll be cm long 1 dot and then the frame number. So that's great. So I want that. And then we've got output resolution. I'm just going to leave it at that for now. Leave everything else as is and show you how to save it. So you go into where it says unsaved config up here, click on that, and then you say save as a preset, and then you put it wherever you put it. And I like to make a directory in here called MRQ, for movie render queue, and I put them in there. So I'll give it a name, MRQ_film 01. Okay, so now that's saved. And so next time we come in, we can just go up into here and find the settings. I tend to use non-tone mapped rendering. So let's just quickly go into settings, and then I'm going to put color output on in here. And then if you go into MISC, you've got your color space settings. So by default, it's internally, Unreal Engine is working with linear sRGB color space, and which means it's got a lot of numbers, but when you look at them in linear sRGB space, it kind of like going beyond the visible space, color space that your monitor can display. So I know, nerd stuff. Those little scientists are going to make an appearance. So it basically takes all that big color range and it makes it fit onto your regular RGB Rec 709 Gamma 2.4 monitor. But it kind of like, so it throws away all that data. And the default of the way that the Unreal renders is to have a tone mapped on, and so if it's like an 8-bit JPEG sequence, then all of that data is thrown away, and it's fine if you're just not going to change the colors on anything or play with it, but I like to have an extra range. So I like to do this thing here that says disable tone curve. But when you do that, when you render your frames, they're going to look kind of more gamma-y and kind of like not how they look on the monitor. So if you don't care about that sort of stuff, just leave the color output off. But if you're a nerdy visual effects type person, then you want to have that on. Okay, so hit accept. So now we're ready to render this. So we would just hit render local. Okay, so now it's rendering those frames, and then this is a low quality preview. And so it's basically taking those frames and it's going to take that long, and now there we go. So it's just basically rendering those things. So those frames are now rendered, and so I'm going to bring them into my editing package, and I'm using DaVinci Resolve, but you use what you love. And then I'm just going to select first frame and the last frame, and then just drag those and put them into here, and then it makes them into a little sequence. So let's just grab my long shot, drag it into my timeline, and then take my wide shot, put it in there. So now I've got them, and as you can see, they're a lot darker because this is not tone mapped. So I need to apply a Colorspace transform onto it. And in DaVinci, you go into the color page, and then you select your node. I'm going to add a serial, Alt-S to add a serial. Select that node, look for Colorspace transform, and you drag that onto that node. And then we change the input color space to sRGB. And then input gamma to linear. And now it looks like it does on the on inside of Unreal. So there you are, back to that. But now you've got more range to play around with your colors and things like that, and you kind of nerd stuff that compositors like to do. All right, well, fun. Well, hopefully that's enough to kind of get you started and kind of point you in the right direction. And then make sure that you like and subscribe my page so that you can follow along for like more advanced versions of this, and then get into the thing that I really love, which is virtual production, where I use Unreal for making the environments, but then use live action on plates and put that into the shots. Anyway, all right, nerding over. See you next time. Bye.